In my psychology practice, I work with a number of men who experience great difficulty, both identifying what it is that they're feeling and then finding the right words to express those feelings. They often struggle to acknowledge what love means to them.
I knew that it was there somewhere, but there wasn't a great expression of love in emotive terms. My father found it very difficult to show any demonstration of his love, affection, physically or emotionally.
Right.
He thought it was a little bit sissy. It wasn't a love-filled family. I don't ever remember my mother and father kissing each other or hugging, and I always put it down to that sort of British thing, you know, the stiff upper lip, and it was probably how generations had been sent away to wars.
Probably how not to love. It was an incredibly violent family. Violence was daily. But as I've got older, of course, I have realised that neither one of my parents cared enough about the 6-year-old to save him from the violence. When I realised that neither one of my parents cared, that became profoundly sad. People talk about love, and it was everything that love shouldn't be.
I think respect for all. I found my parents were very loving towards us. My dad may be a bit more distant. I only ever saw him cry once, so he was a contained person.
We were all very real about our feelings, so when people were happy, they showed it. When people were annoyed or had an issue, we showed it. So we were a family that could express frustration or anger, but I don't think there was no lack of people showing love.
My parents probably thought us kids were more of an annoyance than we were to be loved. We were kept around, we were kept sheltered, we were, educated well, but there was very little emotional love coming from the parents. The parents were on the alcohol quite a bit, and you come home and mum was on she'd be blind drunk and have a Valium, and next thing there wasn't much love to be seen, but there was still a lot of love around in the family, the aunties, the nanas.
My family unit was full of all sorts of role models. Mum was home most of the time, very loving, very giving. I still have memories of Mum getting my sister and I in the kitchen and giving us a song and a tap dance. She put on little shows for us, and they were just for us, and we felt very special. It was a lovely environment. The sisters would come round and they'd bring their families. Every weekend there'd be 15 to 20 kids, maybe a dozen adults, because there was always a couple of friends. We always ate together. It was warm, it was friendly.
The early recollection of that was that they were always working. Both of them were always working. My dad did 3 jobs at one point, and there wasn't much probably the same as Mick. There wasn't much emotional sort of love.
My father was very all the time stern, all the time, disciplined. I was holding his hand the moment he died, and it was only that day earlier that he'd told me for the first time in his life that he actually loved me. It was bizarre.
When I was probably about, I'm going to say, early 40s, I pursued him verbally for about a half an hour, getting him to just say, I'm saying to him, do you love me? Do you love me? And I watched him, crumble's too strong, but not far off it. He just couldn't cope with it. But I suddenly realised how intense his emotion was.
Yeah.
And I also realised he couldn't say it. It wasn't that he didn't want to, it was that he couldn't.
Couldn't utter the words.
And
it was unmanly, or it was not the done thing, you can't express yourself like that, can't be vulnerable like that.
That's it.
People will take advantage of it.
It's not manly.
You show that type of vulnerability in war and you're dead,
Mum was fairly demonstrative. Dad probably a bit more reserved. I think everyone in the family sort of felt that it was their responsibility to look out for other people. love was pretty attached to duty. Yeah, tasks, physical affection, hugs, asking people how their day was.
I had the dream, the ideal upbringing and the ideal childhood. What to me was a very, very loving family. You know, my dad loved us. My elder sister Jenny, she was really like a second mum.
I had a very happy upbringing because they sort of swapped roles, and mum would be more the love and affection and dad would be the hard taskmaster. I liked a lot of the things that my parents did, but obviously there's elements that I think that I would do differently, and not maybe that they're better, but just more because of who I am. I'm always reassessing my feelings and where I'm at.
That love has to manifest itself as behaviour to have weight, I think would be the most important thing. I'm very lucky that both my mother and my father have displayed two slightly different forms of paragons of virtue. Where my father has embodied quite a traditional masculine, paternal, stoic provider figure, whilst my mother has been maternal, caring, more given to emotional regulation. But both of them consistently think of each other's needs and consistently find ways in which to find common ground through their difference, and have consistently displayed sacrifice without sorrow towards both us, themselves, and to their parents.
I was fortunate to have parents who expressed love of a certain form to each other. They were consistent in it and reliable, so it was a safe experience. I had a father who, despite very strong feelings, I can honestly say that I never saw him lose his temper in his whole life. He was marked by kindness, by patience, incredible tolerance, gentleness. He took an interest in us children. He opened up the world to us slowly, and he made it fun to explore and to discover the beauty around us. The sense that you can have a haven that is secure. It's going to be predictable. It's a place of safety. It's a place that you'd be protected, and that you are free to be yourself to some extent without fear, and know that you're accepted.
Well, it's a bit complex. I'm always suspicious when I hear somebody talk about the nuclear family and how it ought to be. Certainly didn't happen for my brother and myself. My mother became very ill with a tumour on the brain in 1946, and it turned out she was also pregnant. And so she died at the age of 30. The child was stillborn. In the sense, Philip and I, my brother, 2.5 years younger than I, we started with that kind of deprivation. We had cousins living in the house, so at age 7 there's that kind of edge. So it's not, let's say, not fostering love, so to speak. And then we went to boarding school, so there's that kind of fatherly love, which as I look back, we experienced. But then we went home to his mother, my grandmother, and his younger sister, and in a sense they brought us up. So till the age of 17, that was my experience of a more family love, and we had aunts and uncles who also, as I look back, were very supportive and loving. And at the age of 17, I joined the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart. I suppose female-feminine formation from my grandmother and Auntie Sheila, so that we had that kind of thing, which means then that I have not had such a strong image of mother, the sense that most people would take for granted.
People that love us can do things to hurt us and harm us and make us feel certain ways in the same way that they can do things to make us feel good and, and joyous and happy and all those other positive emotions.
The older I get and the more kind of groups of people that I kind of churn through and work with in my life, they might come and or go or stay and leave, but it's always family that have kind of been there, as you said, unconditionally providing that. And it's not a tangible feeling, it's not something you can grasp or put your hand on, but it is something that is of the utmost importance to me, that the older I get and the more I realise about careers and art and society, it is kind of that one constant there.
I think in terms of what families taught me is probably that people use love to justify anything, good or bad, at either extreme as well. They are the absolute best things and the absolute worst, and that you can't rely on love alone to necessarily get along with someone.
Because I was a kid that was sent to boarding school at a very young age and hated it and was homesick all the time, I needed my parents when I was sort of like extremely young, and that of course if I didn't like my parents, I wouldn't have wanted to be home with them. So I understood in a very vague sense what love really, or I felt love rather than understood it.
Being the only one of my friends from school to have their parents stay with them has made me very aware of the particular behaviours that my parents exhibit towards each other, which is constant signs of affection. They're always affirming their love through the present moment. So I think that's been a big tool in learning how to love. I moved in with the woman I love. We've been dating for 6 years and we moved in together last year. And that really cast into light the concept. I try and think of love in something akin to Nietzsche's amor fati. And I think of every action I do to my partner should be considered in the lens that I would be comfortable doing it for the rest of my life. So then you find love in how you negotiate whose turn it is to clean the bathroom, regardless of whose hairs litter the bathroom floor. So I think that's probably for me being the most sophisticated understanding of love, is trying to hold myself to a standard that could be repeated endlessly through time. I'm not sure if honour is the right word, but at least to honour my partner as someone I care about and are committed to through time. But through that act of honouring, I'm learning a lot about myself and my shortcomings and what I excel at and what I'm scared of.
My wife is working longer hours now. I think I used to early on. So for me, just making a place where she can come home. I don't want her coming home to have a weekend doing tasks. So I think one way of showing love is just, doing things to anticipate what another person needs. So I think that's one way I show love. I think I'm a bit of a romantic. So the little gestures, the flowers here and there.
I was very lucky that I met a girl who was much more educated than me. She was my only wife, deceased now, I might add. We'd broken up. But I did learn a lot from her. She was a wonderful mother, and she was very affectionate to our 2 children that we had. And unfortunately, I was probably more typical of males of that baby boomer generation. Love was stifled a little bit.
Tough love is important too, and just because you're tough on them doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love them more because you're trying to teach them the correct way, because that's more important than just letting someone do whatever they want and not learning the values.
I think it's limited my ability to love. Look, I was sexually abused too as a child, so there is not much innocence, of normal innocence. I don't mean that I can't be innocent and I can't be nice or good or anything like that. I've deliberately chosen not to be the sort of person that was inflicted on my youth. Look, I think I was always looking for love. I looked for love in sex, as happens for a lot of people. I look for that feeling of being one and being accepted and being respected and all those things that are part of love.
Most everything I've experienced growing up has not impacted who I am as an adult. I've made my own choices since I was a teenager to be how I am, to have my own goals and dreams. How I've used my emotions and my thinking processes has really been, I can't say there's no effect from my childhood of the family and the teachers and school friends I had, but they've never made me be who I am more than me making my own choices.
I've got 4 beautiful kids who I've shown what I believe is, I've been a very affectionate, loving, caring father, even though I've been separated from them through, broken relationships. They've figured out life's pretty cool and they're doing well.
I really do like looking for people to enjoy. Male, female, I don't care, old, young, I don't care. I'm still at that Sunday afternoon party. The more you give, the more you get, and it feels bloody nice.
Just a funny story again. I did a personal development thing about, I can't even remember, 8-9 years ago, something like that. One of the things that they say is that if you want to sort of start resolving your own shit, basically you've got to start dealing with some of the stuff in your family. Never mind solving the problems of the world, solve your own family problems first. Hardest thing to do. So they said, right, okay, what we want you to do is we want you to ring your family members and tell them that you love them. And I said, I grew up in a really good environment. Cool. And then I thought, well, hang on. That's actually not as easy as it said. So anyway, I made the phone call, right? And I ring up Mum and I say, Mum, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. I said, look, I just want to tell you that I love you. And she goes, oh my God, that's so good. Yeah, I love you too. And then I said, can you put Dad on the phone? And so she goes, yeah, hang on. I go, hey Dad, how you doing? He goes, yeah, good. I go, I just want to tell you that I loved you. And he goes, right, I love you too. And I said, he said, that's yeah, I love you too. Yeah, how's everything else going? Good. Next day, I get a call from both of my brothers, right, saying, both of them rang me and they said, matey, you all right? And I said, yeah, what? What's going on? I'm doing this course, right? Yeah. They said, Dad's really worried about you. Dad's really worried about you. He thinks you might be going to top yourself because so just as an example of that,
we don't say we're in love. We don't talk.
Must be really
unless we love, unless we leave at the moment.
That's it. Yeah, okay, I'm off. I do. Yeah, I love you. Don't worry about me. I'm off. The second thing was. It's probably a little bit more difficult to talk about, but my grandfather was a paedophile. I always had that in the back of my mind, that maybe that's in me as well. My third daughter, who I spent a lot of time with, I never hugged her. From about 4 or 5, because I was always afraid that would, not. I never felt that, but I always thought that there might have been a perception that I was too close to her. I remember I was talking to somebody about that, and they said, what a load of shit. Biggest load of shit. And so from that, and I went and apologised to her. I said, look, this is what's caused me to act like that. It's been all my life. I can't remember, she was about 16 or 17. She said, oh, I don't care. I never even noticed,
So she didn't notice your withdrawal?
No, she just thought that was normal.
Sonia would say, my wife, that I was the first man that she ever met that was a hugger of other men, right, and a kisser of other men. Because my dad always kissed me. And my close friendships, you never, we might shake hands, but as soon as you're shaking hands, it's got to be a hug and a kiss that goes in there as well. It certainly was normal in my family, and it's been just a natural thing for me throughout my life. As I was raised, so I tried to show that same level of affection to my daughter.
Definitely check in with people about how they're going. I think, that taking interest is a big part of how I express love.
Even in the past 10 minutes, I've just felt like an absolute tension.
Yeah.
Like there are nails in every wall.
Yeah. I can feel it in my own voice when I'm trying to talk to you about it. I might have a clear thought in my head, but when I start talking, I can feel my voice start to break up a little bit.
Conditioning.
Every word I'm jumping for is just out of grasp.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of...
Just out of interest, why do you think that is?
I suppose it's, I don't know, I mean... We're brought up in this kind of, I don't want to generalise it, but I suppose like young Australian males are maybe brought up in a society that doesn't exactly push tenderness or gentleness or sensitivity. Usually sensitivity is viewed as negative, and me and my partner were having a conversation about this the other day. we did a personality test. I came up as the entertainer, and it had positive traits and negative traits. And one of the negative traits of being an entertainer type person is that you are sensitive. And we both kind of concluded that sensitivity isn't a bad thing, and it shouldn't be viewed as a bad thing, and you shouldn't be viewed as either weak or selfish for being sensitive. I think I've learned that there's a fine line between being sensitive and being defensive.
Yes.
And I think men are super prone to be defensive, especially when challenged by someone who they love. I know I personally struggle with it greatly when I come into conflict with people that I love, my family or my partner. I think my urge is to defend myself and convince both myself and them that I'm not wrong or I am not at fault, even if I am, rather than listen.
I think definitely yes, because I look at the similar patterns in my 5 younger brothers and sisters, all marked by some general themes of patience and a quiet, thoughtful, at times, wisdom, learning to choose our words carefully, which we don't all
always do
at times, but yes, just the general patience and kindness and gentleness. That's what marks all of our siblings, I think, in some way.
I think I demonstrated extreme valuable love with my children by the way I treated them. It's the way I behaved, hopefully, that they learned a lot about how to treat other people and be respectful to other people and to enjoy other people and to share in what they were about and to receive their love and give love.
And the downside of love, if this is where the question goes, of course, is the other way. It doesn't always work out. I've had probably 3 or 4 significant relationships where I didn't end them, and it was cutting.
It comes and leaves, maybe I'm wrong, when you're most relaxed.
Oh, that's interesting.
So when you're not looking for it, when you're not forcing, when you are being who you are, and you're being true to yourself, you're more likely to probably find it.
Love to me is also our ultimate journey to discover the principle, the essence of love. It's our ultimate goal or our quest as human beings, because for survival we're required to find it. And so love to me is a bit like embarking on that journey together with another. Most of us are socialised into trying to make the relationship and look at the relationship at each other and try and make that work. And many of us fail. But if we grasp a sense of the mystery of relationship, that it's not about the relationship in and of itself, it's about if we're focused together on moving into that landscape together with a companion, with somebody who's willing to give up themselves to walk with you, to see the delights of the landscape through their own eyes, and to supplement your own eyes and what you see. That the byproduct of that is the merging of one with the other. That to me is love.
I think self-love is honestly probably the most important. And I think with self-love also comes how you give out your love.
Because I feel like I'm going through a period of real kind of change in which I'm changing and shifting the way I view love and view loving myself. And I think what you said about the way that you love yourself is the way that you give love, and it's a very necessary conversation to have. There's a specific group of people that I hang out and we're very, very tactile. All the guys with each other. We're all very heterosexual. We're a group of dudes that'll kiss each other, and they're like,
that's cool,
on the forehead, on the cheek, whatever. But if we do that, we'll get looks.
Kiss the homies goodnight.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're going to see them tomorrow.
Exactly.
Straight up, 100%.
It's not a sexual thing. I mean, it's a term of affection, and you're affectionate towards your friends. I'm affectionate towards my friends because, I love my friends.
Like you were asking if we teach young men to love themselves and love each other, and I don't think we do. I think any sort of affectionate behaviour or anything that my friend circles have towards each other has just sprung up because we didn't have the negative reinforcement stopping us from doing it. So it's probably a more natural development of it, but we still didn't have anybody sort of I don't feel that we had anybody as kids raising us going, it's okay to do this, like you should be talking to your friends about this, or this is how you resolve these things, rather than punching on with each other.
Exactly.
We weren't taught to love each other, we just figured it out, I think.
It's interesting to talk about it because it is such an important part of our lives, that to really value being loved, to really value the trust and the empathy and the support that comes with a partner that loves you. It's the most wonderful thing to know that you are loved. Understanding that to be loved is one of the greatest gifts that we can receive.
When Richard died, so when he died, I found myself in a totally different space to anything I'd ever imagined. But in the end, the thing with love was that I had to become vulnerable again. I had to be prepared to be hurt, to experience what's worthwhile in love. But to be in love is just completely different. It's completely different. It's an emotional state, it's not a mental state.
I don't even know what love is because I can't decide if I've had love or been in love. I've had those feelings and said that's what it is, and then later on I'll say, that wasn't it. When I give people my time and my resources, that's probably my best internal indication that I'm giving someone what I see as love. Love in multiple forms, not just partnered love, is when it makes you be a better or the best version of yourself.
I've certainly learnt there's a difference between love and lust. Right? And love is something that is absolutely to be cherished. I think I'm blessed in that, really, and that there are 5 or 6 people in my life, and I include my daughter and my son-in-law in that group. I think I'm blessed that there are 5 or 6 people that care enough about me and love me enough that they would be there no matter what, right? Because I don't think many people have a lacrosse team.
I think you're right.
Right? Let alone soccer, rugby league, rugby union, or an AFL team.
Love is a behaviour that is akin to gardening. That it's not always just worship and it's not always just devotion. That the act of love is trying to grow someone and to grow yourself in the best possible way. And so part of that would be to be alert to things like assertion and be alert to negative emotion, but to not immediately dismiss them and to be mindful of prioritising their self in the relationship to a healthy degree.
I think what I'd tell kids and other guys is, talk about it, because it's the real reason we're here. But what makes you happy? What makes you satisfied? What makes you go to sleep without a problem of a night time? It's being loved.
I think the key is trying to help people identify who they are and what makes them tick. And I think if we're able to do that, then I think the rest falls into place.
I think the key to men's image and how men feel about themselves is actually women. I was on the Prostate Cancer Foundation board for 10 or 11 years, and probably one of the changes we made was we included women in our message, because we knew the effect they could have on men.
Yes.
But men have to accept that women think differently. They are much better at health than men are. We've made steps forward. I think men's sheds have been a wonderful, wonderful thing where men can talk and can express themselves.
From a very young age, when I certainly was, there was an idea of what a man is, and the goal in life is to be a man. It's very important what we teach children, young boys, about what being a man is, because the more careful we are about what we instill in them about what it is to, and not just to be a man, but to be a good human, I think that along the way we might have missed a few steps, and that's resulted in this hypermasculinity. Maybe we talk to them more about their feelings, talk to them more about who they think they are, who they want to be, who they think they identify as, instead of forcing them to deny who they identify as.
I feel like that was all especially pushed sort of early 1900s, mid 1900s.
Yeah.
You had men going off to war, men coming back home. You were supposed to be the man of the family, take care of the house, take care of the family, do all these things, provide, don't show emotion.
The only way I see that we can really sort of, in this day and age, change it, especially for young people, is if our social media influencers, our role models, our celebrities, all these other people preach this kind of message of like, it's okay to be, authentic in your emotions and stuff.
I don't want to sound preachy here, but we need to put more emphasis into the arts.
Yeah,
in a young age, because when someone asked, my first day of acting school, they said, "What is art?" And we kind of came across this umbrella term that's quite safe to use, and it is art is a reflection of society. It's us holding up a mirror. And I'll always remember that one lecture thinking, well, that's necessary that we have that, and we as artists are there to hold each other and society accountable. So instead of putting so much emphasis on getting to footy training, getting to swimming training, put your kids into a dance class, put your kids into an acting school or something, because you learn as you listen to these stories and you read these stories and you reapproach these situations. You learn about these characters, and you inevitably have to learn something about yourself and society.
I think young boys should be encouraged to get out their emotions when they're not happy, not just when they're happy. So the hugs happen when they're happy. The blokes in footy teams hug each other when they've won the game.
The beginning of school, at a minimum, is when boys would need to be shown that it's fine to express your emotions, that there's nothing wrong with that, whether they be happy or sad or very inward or outward directed emotions, that those are healthy, so that people grow up not being fearful to feel what they feel, because a lot of what ends up in things like abusive actions and uncertainty and fear, which lead to depression and potentially suicide, these come from people being unable to connect acceptance of their feelings. So accepting that the feelings are normal, to me, is step one, and then after that comes dealing with understanding different kinds of emotional outputs, whether they be love or anger. Unfortunately, men are shown by previous generations that holding your feelings in, or only letting them out when it's desperation needs, or when you've got to basically go and have a huge response to somebody, is the norm.
I think we need to identify in a large scale how men can create meaning in their life. And I think you need to answer that question before you answer what their emotional landscape should look like. And I think we also need to do as much work as we can to put the locus of cultural discourse on the individual before groups, so you are free on an individual level to explore yourself, and therefore to allow difference into the equation. I think a lot of men are actively searching for how to make meaning, because the way the workforce has changed has destroyed men's understanding of themselves as protectors and providers. And part of it's necessary. It is wasteful and unethical to consign half of humanity to the living room so men can feel better about themselves. But that should not negate the fact that our hardware is geared towards understanding ourselves in specific roles. We evolved to do dangerous tasks to better the tribe. And I think that's hard to shake. I think that exists in a really deep way. I think everyone needs to be non-dismissive of the male want, not privilege, but the want to provide and to protect. And then I think men need to understand how that can either be transmitted into a culture that does not allow that readily, or does not allow that hermetically just for the male in their family unit. Or we need to think of other ways that we can find meaning outside of those roles. And I think taking responsibility for oneself is a really good, useful place to start.
To even begin to be able to impart to any child or child in a adult body, which many of us are emotionally in our brokenness, is to start to re-establish the basics of a relationship, the basics of an attachment, a sense of a secure relationship that is reliable. It's not going to overreact or be unpredictable in the way that it's expressed. It can be relied upon just to be looking, to be mindfully watching out for, and to then, once engagement is established, to be characterised by respect, by a sense of kindness, by gentleness, by a sense of patience and compassion, so that the other can be drawn or wooed back into a relationship when, up to that point, their experience is petrifying. So the basis for imparting love to anyone, from my understanding, is to learn to express that consistent space that welcomes the other in their own time to approach. And as children develop at an age-appropriate level and you establish the relationship and restore that relationship with them, to role model to them, to teach them to put into words what it is that makes that relationship important above all others, so that you're ensuring that they've got the conscious tools to begin to use for themselves as they mature, where up to that point they may have unconsciously taken the principles of love for granted and never actually ever put them into words for themselves.
Growing up, when I did have like male role models who seemed pretty integrated, like seemed to be able to integrate the anger as well as, other more vulnerable emotions into their life. Yeah, I think that gave me, a bit of hope, and it's like, I can behave in a different way.
It's culture change. So we need patience here. There's no, you just have to say, because that's just not. It's something you have to get a roll on and wait a generation or two or three, but that doesn't mean you don't start. It means you start early so you get there.
Well, I firmly believe that Australian men have been undervalued to the point of torture in a lot of ways over the last couple of decades due to the influence of international feminism and the fault that Australian men are supposed to have carried for the woes and the way women were treated in various other countries over many, many centuries, And I repeat what I said before about being in a fatherless society. Don't blame men for the way we turned out girls. Just saying, my generation and the generations that came forward were mainly cultured and cultivated by the women in their families. They were given their morals, their attitudes, their way of being, and probably their lack of emotional capacity as well. Men have been terribly stigmatised. I don't know if there is a way back from there. Actually, it'd be a good start if every second television ad didn't make out blokes to be imbeciles, or loveless, or useless, or emotionally inept.
I try to show it in front of the kids. I'm always giving their mum a hug and a kiss, and I tell her that I love her. I tell her that she's done, an awesome job of this, and that I'm very proud of her, and that I'm, and I support her, and I try to use that as an example rather than just saying things. I do.
That's probably the only way, really.
I'm going to keep on hugging and kissing and telling people I love them.
What do I say as a priest in my official roles? What kind of homily do I give? that the potential there for, say, empathetic priests with a congregation or with group meetings, parish meetings, etc., adult education, the kind of language one uses, the perspectives one points out, the personal contact, I think that's one way.
I come up with drills that I know will work for me. And then secondly, I practice the drill. We need to find the drills that allow us to overcome the problems that you've identified. Let's just go to road rage. Mm-hmm. You've got to find ways of surviving.
Yes.
So I give myself a direction. Don't get angry. Now, it works, but it didn't work at first. It took a long time.
Practice.
Don't get angry. I never get angry now because I keep giving myself that direction. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. And now I give myself that. I add to it. Laugh at it. Laugh at it. Then I add to it and say, right, you're being a better person because you have learned how to control your emotions when before you didn't. Now that's a drill.
Mercurial, it is, and I mean it can so easily be lost for the most abstract of reasons, you know. I mean,
fragile.
Yeah, so fragile. That connection, that open channel of, I suppose the only time I can describe the love that I felt was just feeling of one, feeling connected to that depth. And then when that's extracted, well, fuck, excuse me, it's like, wow, devastation.
I'd been taught, don't show it.
Yeah,
Hide your sensitivity.
6 weeks on the floor and I lost half my body weight.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much. You know, lost all muscle tone.
Yeah.
Lost everything. You know, it destroyed me. This is only a couple of years ago now.
Oh, okay.
I was a 62-year-old man, for Christ's sake. You know, I think that's what people do want. They do want love and joy.
I think you have to be brave.
I will go emotionally and physically and whatever to a space that I would not be able to get to on my own. That's what makes it worthwhile. You know, it's why you take the risks that you take. It's, you know, it's why we do it. It's because, and that space is much better than being alone.
So if you want to be loved, show the love.
Yeah.
I think that's the key. And if you find something that you do love, whether that be a person, sport, TV show, you know, whatever it is these days, you know, a website, you know, show it because it's important. And even just the feeling of getting it off your chest or knowing that you do have that in your life and you're vocal about it or express it is great in itself. As I said, there's nothing better than waking up in the morning and seeing my little daughter smile at me, and it's the best thing since lost bread.
I think the ability to emotionally regulate is useful and should not be dismissed, but that can be taken to extremes and often is. So I think to all the men watching this, I would say, when someone says to you, open up and feel more or display feeling more, it is perfectly natural to be wary and acceptable for you to interrogate that, as long as you also interrogate yourself.
I think this topic is important above all else. Because if we don't get this, nothing else really matters. I think it's important also that men are encouraged to have the courage to start to put words around their own experience of love and what is important to them.
You know, even though it's abstract, love's, you know, probably the realest thing. Yeah, the most redemptive force in the world, in the universe. If you're not willing to experience pain, then you have then you have a very limited capacity to experience love or express love or give love.
Really, really appreciate it because it's super, I'm going to swear, it's super fucking rare. Like genuine, actual, like love to feel it from another person, and it's the best thing ever. You don't be afraid to love. Don't be afraid to say I love you. You know what I mean? Like don't be afraid to say to that girl you love her. Don't be afraid to say to your parents, to your grandparents, to your friends, I love you guys. Fucking no, why not? Exactly. See, I just did it. How hard is it?
Jacob.
You know what I mean? Exactly. That's it.
Last night, lying in bed, my partner said to me something like, tell me why you love me, or tell me something you love about me. And I got boyish and I got coy and I kind of just went, and I should be like, Shakespeare wrote books and books and books and books of it because he felt liberated, and he felt like he had a voice that was able to do that. And even to the person that I love, I wasn't able to put into words. And I've like, they're in my brain. There's just no motor neurons that can connect them and say, it's this that I love.
I think Sonia has been particularly instrumental in showing me that it's okay to love myself. Don't go overboard, darling. Right? Make sure you love me more. But it is, you have to love yourself and you have to look after yourself. Right? And if you can get to that place where you carry that intrinsic belief that I'm a good person and I'm worthwhile, then I reckon you can get through just about everything.
Said the apple to the orange, all I want is you to come close to me and kiss me to the core. Then you might know me like no other orange has ever done before. Because it says to me, that song, those words say, you've seen me warts and all, and you haven't walked away. And that's really precious.
To learn how to be really happy at somebody else's happiness is a hard thing to do. The moment I see someone's strength is to work with it, and not only work with it, to encourage it 100%. And if you do that in relationships, you give yourself a really good chance, because you come to love their successes as much as you love your own successes.
Can you talk a little bit about what love means to a celibate priest?
We were brought up initially in what you've got on your list of loves, agape. So it's love of everyone, selfless, oriented to others, through love of God, love of neighbour, that kind of love. And I think for many of us that has sustained us. But it has sustained us only because, as you asked before about friends, I think we discovered philia, the love of friendship. And I like quoting C.S. Lewis, people may know the Four Loves. We didn't have that intense intimacy, let alone the eros or the passion, at least not directed in a sexual, genital way. They used to make the distinction, which I thought was helpful, between genitals, sexuality, and general sexuality, so that a celibate should not be asexual. The celibate, male or female, is sexual, but a general sexuality which incorporates the great values of friendship, which leads to friendship intimacy rather than passion intimacy.
I think you can love somebody, but I think you can also be in love. I think there's a difference.
I'm single. I don't have a partner in my life these days. I have lots of female friends. I enjoy female company. I'm still looking for love after all these years, and I haven't given up on love. I know it's there, and there is someone for everyone, even me.
So what have we learned? We need to encourage men to talk more. We can't do it alone. We need women to help the change. I think we need to have a discussion about what sort of men we want in our society. We need to teach men how to identify their thoughts and their feelings, and to find words to express what it is that they're feeling. I think we need to encourage men to role model the sorts of behaviours that we want from our boys. Let's prioritise fathers spending quality time with their sons. Let's encourage boys to talk about their dreams and their fears. We need to put a high value on respectful behaviour in our society. Change takes time. We need to be patient. We're really asking men and women what it means to be a man in our society. Men, let's start talking.